A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Before we begin, let's establish a standard of reliability and truthfulness amongst all the books in the world. And because I can't be there while you're going through this presentation, I'm taking the liberty to directly arrive at the intended question. Should the book you know as the Qur'an not singularly be on the first position? Now here is another simple question. The Qur'an which you have with you today, do you believe that it is word to word, letter to letter, mark to mark the same as it was delivered by the messenger? If your answer is no to either of these questions, you're wasting your time watching this video. But if your answer is yes, then please continue. Now in the beginning, I would just like to say that whoever it was, they caused that Muslims effectively will not take the Quran's statements seriously. It is a huge discussion on its own how and why all of that happened in the first place. But at the moment, I would like to confine myself to the results of the conspiracy against the Quran. Via this conspiracy, it has been embedded deep within the subconscious psyche of Muslims that the Quran they read is somehow different from the one the messenger delivered. Why Muslims do not trust the Quran? What is trust? It is to be reliable, to have confidence in something or someone, have assurance regarding a matter or a person. It is freedom from doubts and suspicions about a matter. Let's discuss some beliefs of Muslims about the Quran. But in reality, these are the deep-seated doubts that Muslims carry with them. There are different codices of the Quran in the world with different verses. Quran was in 7 different dialects of local Arabs. Messenger received some verses, but they are not part of Quran. Quran's authoritative manuscript was not published by the messenger. Bismillah was revealed as Bi-Isme Allah, but it was changed by agreement of people who compiled the Quran. Quran's diacritical marks were introduced after the messenger. The sequence of Quran's reading is different from how it was revealed. These are the doubts that Muslims carry with them, and these are the doubts that have been introduced in the minds of everyone in the world. People are blinded by these doubts and they fail to see the Quran's true spirit and message. Let's discuss a couple of these doubts. Religious clerics have established a narrative that the word Bismillah, which we read in the Quran, was actually revealed as Bi-Isme Allah. It was only after the passing of the messenger, his companions agreed to write it as Bismillah instead of Bi-Isme Allah. These guys want to establish in people's minds that the Quran's words and letters can change. And can you imagine the implications of this belief? Once someone is convinced that a book which claims to be perfect can somehow be modified, that book will start to lose its validity in the eyes of that person. This works subconsciously for most people. And the worst part is that these scholars openly attribute the crime of hazf in Quran to the companions of the messengers. Hazf in Arabic means the act or instance of omitting or being omitted, taking away, clipping off, writing off, to take something out of its place. Ironically, there is a perfectly good root word ba, sin, mim or bism present in Arabic language. Amongst several dictionaries, some of the most detailed ones like Edward William Lane's Arabic English Lexicon describes bism as a smile, flashing of teeth, flashing of clouds. And Dictionary of Quranic Usage by Brill also says the same with an addition of to bloom. Even a cursory reading of this root word explains that it means to become distinct. And if we do a reverse lookup of the word bism and search how its plural form bismat is used, it makes things even more clearer. Bismat mushtarka, common features. Bismata khasa, special feature. Bismat al-quwwat al-amilata, profile of the workforce. Bismatiha al-matmaziyata, its features of distinctiveness. Tabassama, to smile, stand out, upgrade. Bism means a distinctive feature, an upgrade to one's self. It is something that gives its possessor a higher distinction. Now, an obvious question that arises here is that in presence of a perfectly explainable root word, why would Muslims go out of their way to first establish that the Quran's lettering was changed and then invent a fabricated explanation of a made-up word? Let's discuss another doubt that Muslim scholars spread, that the sequence of Quran's reading is different from how it was revealed. Would you like to tell me which book in the world is that before you read it, you establish in your mind that the author wrote such and such a sentence while eating, wrote that sentence in his office, wrote this phrase at home, and wrote such and such a thing in a gathering of people? Take any book. The message within that book can only be understood when the narrative in the writing and the sentences and the phrases balance each other and are contextually talking about the same thing. Call it a linear reading, but without the internal context of that writing, the spirit of that message will become lost, and all you'll be left with are sentences that may or may not be associated with one another. And this is exactly what they've done to the understanding of verses of Quran by breaking them up as Madniyan and Meccan verses. What they've done is that they have taken the context out of Quran and have put it in human written books like Asbab-e-Nuzul or Reasons of Revelations. It is no wonder that Muslims cannot see the relevance of the message in the Quran because they use outside context to understand the Quran instead of relying on its own internal context. These are the doubts that plague the subconscious psyche of especially Muslims, which is perpetuated by their beloved clerics. These doubts about the Quran move its credibility downwards. It is only lip service saying that the Quran is on the first place, but in fact, the Quran is suppressed under these doubts. And these doubts in the subconscious of Muslims cause that Muslims do not feel the authenticity of the Quran. They do not consider the Quran as the spoken word of Muhammad, make the Quran appear as difficult, instill doubt that the Quran and Allah somehow can be changed. The Quran is incomplete without extra Quranic narration. And this begs the question that can the Quran and Allah somehow be changed? Aren't we told that God and the Quran are unchangeable? And what does it mean for something to be permanent? We already know as a scientific fact that for something to be permanently the same, there must not be any change in it. Let's list a few factors that can change about something. There are both internal and external factors. Some of the internal or personal factors are its speed, its color, its mass, volume, its direction, the strength it has, and its temperament. And some of the external factors that can affect change are time, position, state of its matter, environment, pressure or force being applied to it. Now regarding God, it is obvious that we cannot get to know any more than what we've been told in the Quran. So keeping that in mind, we can safely say that God is since and till forever. In fact, the quality of time is not applicable to God to begin with, because we calculate time since the Big Bang and God has been there even before that. But to keep things simple, let's just focus on the fact that He is since and till there will be time. We know that God is everywhere all the time. He is always the most powerful, and there has never been a time in history where He was less powerful. And He has not lost patience and has never done anything in haste. Even the punishments that were brought about upon a people came to them after their due time was up. We can start to see a pattern here. There is no changing God. Let's see what the Quran says about change. Sunnatullahi fil lazina khalaw min qabl walan tajida li sunnatillahi tabdila. Precedent of Allah with those who passed away before, and never you will find for precedent of Allah any change. Sunnata man qad arsalna qablaka min rusulina wala tajidu li sunnatina tahwila. A precedent sunnah for who we sent before you from our messengers, and not you will find for our precedent sunnah any alteration. Ma yubaddalu al-qawlu ladayya wama ana bizallamin lil-abid. No change in the speech for me, and not I am with darkness for my slaves. Now, especially this last verse, I am not with darkness. It is such a profound thing to tell someone who is your subordinate. It means that he does not keep his subjects in the dark about a matter. All the things that the subjects need to know are out in the open. God won't change his mind tomorrow. He won't keep you in the dark. And that is what makes reliance on Allah all the more special, that you know for a fact that he won't change his mind. Can you imagine working for a boss who would keep you in the dark regarding your duties and responsibilities? It would be absolutely infuriating and would keep you frustrated because you wouldn't know what your boss wants. So we can see that nothing about God can change, and especially what we came to clearly see is that God's word does not change. God's sunnah does not change, and God's law does not change. So let's see how this understanding impacts the currently established narrative regarding Allah. What do you know about Adam and Eve? We are told that Allah made Adam and then made Eve or Hawa, and when they bore children who were brothers and sisters were married off and had more children. In plain and simple words, Allah caused the system to be in such a way that the earth had to be populated via incest. But ironically, incest is forbidden in the Qur'an. So, was God okay with incest in the past, but now has changed his mind? Do you think that God is not of a permanent mind? Whereas, we just read a verse from Qur'an that Allah does not changes his sunnah even for his messengers. So if God was previously okay with incest and since then he has changed his sunnah, what if he changes it again and makes it obligatory to have incest? Don't you think this is disgusting? This is another example of how extra-Quranic preconceived ideas cause Muslims to be in a complete disconnect with the Quran. They believe Adam to be the first person and a messenger, but when confronted with the fact that Allah has forbidden incest clearly in the Quran, they concede to the idea of a God that changes and also shamelessly come up with lame excuses to support the filth ascribed to the messengership. These colorful beliefs cloud the vision of Muslims and they see a completely different picture of the Quran. These doubts are the primary obstacles which bar the Muslim mind from opening up. And these doubts, which Muslims take as staunch beliefs, ironically keep them primitive and forces upon them a mindset which rejects not just scientific advancements, but also keep them from reaching a place where they may live according to an objective social justice without corruption or slavery of their enforced kings and queens and oppressive governments. At the end of this presentation, I request you to take the understanding of the Quran beyond doubt. History has been distorted and doubt has been introduced to rob you of your understanding of this book. Yes, that is how important that book is, that a collective of people had to make sure that other people may not get inspired from it and keep on living under their servitude. Thank you for your time. Your well-wisher, Shahjahan Akber.